From the Rampage challenging Rogan to step into the octagon, to the commentator undermining Frank Mir's abilities, these are fighters who had beef with Joe Rogan. Starting with Quinton Jackson. Jackson is known for speaking his mind, and he didn't hold back when he had a bone to pick with Joe Rogan. Apparently, Rogan questioned Jackson's lack of kicks in his striking game, and that didn't sit well with him. In an interview back in 2012, Jackson straight up told Rogan to put his money where his mouth is. He wanted Rogan to step into the ring and try kicking someone who's ready to take him down. But Jackson wasn't done there. He confidently claimed that if he ever fought Rogan, he would overpower him and come out on top. Those are some bold claims. And can you even imagine that showdown? Rampage against Rogan in the octagon. And wait for it, Jackson even accused Rogan of being biased towards those jiu-jitsu specialists during fights. He went as far as joking that Rogan might as well be playing the rusty trombone. But guess what? Rogan didn't take the bait. He didn't jump into a verbal spar with Jackson. Nope, he played it smart and bumped into Rampage backstage at a UFC event. Good move, Joe. Instead of trading insults, he went with a friendly tone. Man took the high road here, but there was a reason behind it too. Joe made sure to let Rampage know that when he talks about fighters, it's never meant as disrespect, just in case he had gotten the wrong idea. According to Rogan, he actually likes the guy, but who knows how much of that is actually the truth. Because he definitely doesn't like Chris. Justino Rogan found himself in hot water during an episode of his JRE podcast, when he made a joke about female MMA star Chris Justino. It all happened during a conversation with comedian Tony Hinchcliffe and UFC president Dana White. The conversation took a turn towards roasting celebrities, and the topic of Cyborg came up. Comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, known for his wit, couldn't contain his enthusiasm and wondered how he would even begin to roast her. And then in true Rogan fashion, he replied saying, "Her dick, yikes." Hinchcliffe added fuel to the fire by saying that Cyborg cuts weight by chopping off her. Obviously Cyborg didn't find the joke amusing. She went off on Twitter, accusing them of bullying and highlighting the negative impact their insensitive remarks had. She even took to Facebook later and talked about the negative impact their insensitive remarks had on her. And you know what? She's got a point. When high-profile guys like Joe Rogan start making these kinds of jokes, it sets a terrible example, giving fans and others in the sport the impression that such comments are acceptable. And let's face it, nobody deserves to be bombarded with messages attacking their self-esteem. Realizing the gravity of his words, Rogan publicly apologized to Cyborg, taking responsibility for his remarks. But that wasn't the only time a female athlete fired back against the commentator. So did Ronda Rousey. Rogan was once Ronda Rousey's biggest fan. He hailed her as a once-in-a-lifetime athlete, but their relationship hit a rough patch after Rousey's knockout loss to Holly Holm at UFC 193. Rogan didn't hold back on his podcast. He delivered some brutally honest comments that hit Rousey right in the gut. According to him, Rousey's ego had gotten the best of her, and that's ultimately what made her lose. He made it clear that the fight game doesn't care about your charisma, your appearances on Entourage, or your fancy movie deals. Those words stung Rousey. There were signs that the once solid bond between them was cracking. Remember when she stormed off stage before Rogan could even get a chance to interview her after a stare-down with Amanda Nunes? The UFC tried to play it down, saying she had never agreed to an interview, but Joey Diaz spilled the beans on his podcast. According to Joey, Rousey was furious with Rogan. In fact, she was angry at anyone who said anything negative about her loss back then. And the saga continued. Rousey walked off again before Rogan could get a word in after the UFC 207 weigh-ins. And then, to top it all off, she did it once again in the octagon after her second consecutive loss. Safe to say, Rousey never really forgave Rogan, and neither did Fallon Fox. In 2014, Rogan unsurprisingly found himself in a bit of a controversy. It all started when a trans fighter, Fallon Fox, entered the world of women's MMA. Rogan, being Rogan, had some strong objections to this. On his podcast, he didn't hold back. In his opinion, Fallon was still a f***ing man, and nothing could change that biologically. That's why he doesn't think Fallon should be allowed to fight women in MMA. That's when Parker Marie Molly, a writer for Vice Sports, decided to support Fox in an article. Molly called out Rogan's argument was phony, but Joe wasn't one to back down easily. He labeled the article biased and, in classic fashion, posted a doctor's opinion that conveniently supported his own argument. Now, Fox herself wasn't about to take Rogan's comments lying down. She took to the virtual pages of the Bloody Elbow website to give her side of the story, and called out Rogan for his hurtful rhetoric and misinformation, and demanded an apology. Fox believed that Rogan had a golden opportunity to clear things up and not look like such a jerk. But here's the thing, while Rogan insisted that he was 100% in favor of transgender people, he stuck to his guns on the matter of Fox fighting females. And you know what? Since then, she hasn't stepped into the octagon again. The saga continued, leaving us all wondering if a resolution would ever be reached. Well, Tyron Woodley and Joe definitely didn't. Woodley was absolutely fuming when he rewatched his win over Carlos Condit back in UFC 171 in 2014. Why? Well, because Rogan had some choice words about Woodley's cardio during the fight. He just couldn't resist making references to Woodley's muscular physique, saying it made him more prone to cardio issues. At one point, he even compared Woodley to a muscle car, saying, "It's fun to hit that gas, but you're not going to make it to Vegas." Woodley didn't take too kindly to Rogan's commentary. He called it horrendous and felt like they were punishing him for training hard and being in tip-top shape. On top of that, Woodley accused Rogan of being biased in favor of Condit, although Rogan insisted that it was nothing personal. He's still a fan of Woodley as a fighter and as a man. Rogan was quick to apologize before things got too out of hand, just like he did with Jose Aldo. A little technical mishap got Joe Rogan into a bit of trouble. It was back in 2015, just before the epic showdown between Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor at UFC 194. You see, someone forgot to hit the mute button, and suddenly, Rogan's less than flattering comments about Aldo were broadcast for all to hear. Yikes. So what did Rogan say? Well, he was caught telling a producer that Aldo looked soft, deflated, and way different. Oh boy, not exactly the kind of pep talk you want your opponent to hear, right? But hey, let's give Rogan the benefit of the doubt. He quickly added that it could just be the fact that he was doing more cardio than before, and that he didn't want to jump to conclusions. Now, Aldo himself didn't personally respond to Rogan's remarks, but his coach, Andre Pederneiras, was not about to let this slide. He took to social media and went off on Rogan. Pederneiras posted pictures of Aldo from his previous fights, showing that he looked pretty much the same. Rogan ended up apologizing and acknowledging that he was in the wrong. He also made it clear that Aldo was one of his all-time favorite fighters. Smooth move, Rogan. That wasn't the only time the commentator undermined a fighter's skills. Something similar happened to Frank Mir. Former heavyweight champ Mir was not a happy camper when he felt that Joe Rogan had undermined one of his major wins. It all went down after Mir defeated Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira by TKO. But then, during Nogueira's next fight, Rogan mentioned that the poor guy had been hospitalized because of a nasty staph infection just weeks before his previous bout. Well, that didn't sit well with Mir. He felt like Rogan was making excuses for fighters who didn't perform well. Mir didn't hold back, calling Rogan's behavior disheartening, and even going as far as saying it was sad and pathetic. Ouch! But you know what they say, actions speak louder than words. And Mir shut down any remaining doubt about his skills when he brutally broke Nogueira's arm with a nasty Kimura submission in 2011. So, from the commentator undermining Frank Mir's abilities to the Rampage challenging Rogan to step into the ring, these were fighters who had beef with Joe Rogan.